Welcome to OpenX. We're here today to unlock the value exchange in your CDR product reference data. My name's Dennis Mamo, I'm from ID Exchange. Our business is to create private, safe and powerful data exchanges between customers and businesses. ID Exchange also represents DigiMe, which is a global private data sharing platform. With me today is Grant Augustin, CEO of SISS Data Services. Grant's developed an out-of-the-box product API that will have you complying and participating in open banking within days. Also joining us today is Peter Spedden, CTO of SISS Data Services. So Grant, for those viewers who don't know who SISS Data Services is and what you do, can you give us an overview?
Grant Augustin, CEO and founder of SISS Data Services. Our story is a simple one. In 2009, we built a platform for the 4 major banks in Australia to be able to share safely and securely consented consumer data with fintechs. So when we talk data, we talk bank account, credit card, term deposit data. In terms of customers, we have local and global fintechs, so we count the likes of Sage, Intuit, BGL, Wise as our customers, and we provide data now for over 400,000 Australians.
Fantastic. So what is product reference data and why is it important?
Yeah, so product reference data, look, in one way you could describe product reference data as the digital version of a product disclosure statement that a bank produces that's made available via a public API. In open banking terms, though, a bank's product reference data API will be the way in which a bank's products are measured and compared. So it's quite important for them to get it right in an open banking context.
Right, so it's not just a text solution though, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I think any bank that views their product reference data as a compliance process that they need to tick off or a piece of tech that they need to install will struggle in the open banking environment. The product reference data API is a sales and marketing tool. It should sit with the product and marketing team and be viewed as a way for banks to attract and win new customers.
Right, so for the big banks who've got massive marketing budgets, I guess that's one thing, they can afford to play in this area. What about for non-major banks and fintechs who maybe don't have such a big marketing budget? How does this work for them?
Yeah, look, so I think one of the great benefits of the product reference data API is to a certain extent it's a leveler, it's a level playing field for everyone. So you will be sharing data the exact same way as a smaller bank, the exact same way that a major bank has to share data. So it is a great opportunity to compete, and not only compete but thrive in open banking. So getting your product data right, viewing it as a sales and marketing tool is important going forward.
Right, and I guess what does this mean for a bank developing its marketing strategy to see what the other companies are doing, what their competitors are doing? Yeah,
so I think the product reference data information that's about to be shared is a unique opportunity for all banks. For the first time, you're going to have readily available access to your competitors' products and their offerings. So there is now the ability to do deep research for product positioning and product marketing and defining markets that you want to win for the smaller banks. So whether that's a regional bank or a industry-based bank, gives you the opportunity to see how your product compares to the others, offer great features and dominate and win that market.
Right, so while there's a requirement to comply, DigiMe, we're often asked the question, how will it actually be used? Will people actually uptake this? What place does it sit?
Yeah, that's a good question, Dennis. So there's often a pessimistic view that this product data won't be used, and all I can say is I think it will be. The common and most obvious use case is product comparison sites. So you look at your Finder, Mozo, CanStar, they will be getting access to your product data on a regular basis. So instead of the current process where they may get product updates on a 6-month or 12-monthly basis, they can actually now access your product API and access any changes to your product immediately. Then there's other less common use cases, but important. So I think the other use case will definitely be banks to use it for product research. But we'll also see new use cases, such as we're currently working with a mortgage broking firm who want to implement product reference data to engage with clients to see how their products or the products that they have compared to others on offer. And accounting software providers are looking to implement product reference data for business customers to make sure they've got the best business products for them. So I think there will be a lot of use for product reference data, but it will be in that sales and marketing space. So banks need to be prepared.
Yeah, certainly the DigiMe is very excited about what you've been able to develop, because there's a DigiMe platform will capitalise on that, but we'll talk about that later. So the first stage of open banking for non-major banks, the deadline is 1st of October, which is not far away. What's your assessment of the readiness of these institutions for that deadline?
Yeah, look, I think one observation I've seen is a few of the banks are starting to panic. 1 October is not that far away. So one message I would say to all banks is you have time, don't panic, and certainly don't panic by an open banking solution. So product reference data is required by 1 October. The ACCC has announced a delay for the next stage, which is sharing consumer data to 1 July 2021. So I would say to banks, the ones who aren't ready, don't panic, you have time. And I would be looking to evaluate all offerings in the market, whether that's through your core banking provider or an external provider. Take the time to evaluate them all, understand what your objectives are in open banking, and select the provider that best suits you. But do not go out and panic buy the first one that comes along.
Okay, so you're saying there's some different options available to institutions. Can you expand on that a bit more?
Yeah, look, so generally speaking for banks, there's 3 options to them, options available to them for open banking. First one is build. Building, or all options have pros and cons. Building requires discipline and commitment, and building your own open banking platform this late in the game, I would probably advise against. Your next option is to buy or license, and buying a open banking platform or licensing can significantly reduce the cost for a bank. But you do need to be mindful that you are still bound to that provider, and there is a significant investment for the bank in terms of maintaining and the upkeep of that software. So it's not a set and forget. The last option is to look at an external provider as a service, so an open banking provider as a service. Typically these are subscription based. They tend to be the most cost effective and are more suited to a bank who doesn't have the internal expertise and want to outsource that. But once again, the downside to that is you are closely bound to that provider. So you'd want to make sure you're comfortable with them and that you can work with them.
So Grant, exactly what does success look like in an open banking partnership?
Yeah, look, for a bank, success, I think, and that's a tough question. I think success would be that a bank finds a partner who can work with them and evolve quickly. I think the fintech space is very fast-paced. It evolves quickly. Fintechs talk in 2-week sprints. So a bank needs to have a partner who can evolve and add features quickly. If they don't, they introduce new risk into the bank, and that risk is that their partner for open banking isn't offering services or functionality that their competitors are, and that you're playing second fiddle to the market. So success for a bank, I think, is having a partner who is fast-paced, agile, and can respond to the needs of open banking.
So again, what you're saying is this market does move quickly, but to our audience of CEOs, CTOs, and marketers, that does sound like a more risky proposition when the whole market isn't used to moving that quickly. How can you reassure our viewers that what you're talking about can be achieved and is a safe option?
Yeah, look, I think introducing any external party brings new risk, and fintechs, and who you partner with brings in additional new risk. The advice I'd have to CTOs and CEOs out there is I think the partner you choose is quite important. So you would be wanting to select a partner that has a track record, who has delivered, so you can feel confident that they will deliver on your open banking outcomes. I don't think this is the time for us to test new participants, especially with the obligations that banks have under APRA and CPS requirements as well.
What specific advice would you offer banks when selecting an open banking service provider?
Yeah, look, I think the first point I would make is, look, don't enter into a long-term contract or don't enter into a contract that you can't terminate with short notice. And the reason for that is the very nature of open banking and fintechs is that it is fast-paced, it is evolving. My experience with the most successful global fintechs is they do not enter into an agreement longer than 24 months, not because they don't trust the parties, but they believe that tech and opportunities evolve at such a fast pace that you need to reevaluate every supplier on a 2-year basis and then align them going forward. So that would be the first, no locking contracts. And the second, which I mentioned earlier, is look, just don't panic buy. There is that fear at the moment that if we don't lock in now or we don't get a provider, we're going to miss out. That is not the case. There is a number of providers out there. You need to take your time, evaluate what's out there and select the provider that best suits you.
So it's no coincidence that you're here talking to us today as our partner. You've developed an open banking product reference data, API. Tell us about your API and why, for those banks and institutions that haven't already made arrangements, they should be looking at what you've developed.
Yeah, so look, for banks who haven't made a decision and are looking for a solution, look, we do offer a product reference data API. It is a fully hosted, standalone solution that allows banks to comply and comply quickly. It does not require integration. It is online, and if I was to simplify it, your product or marketing teams can log in, create your products and publish instantly. It's that simple. As for the why use SISS, look, I think experience counts. We've been contracting with banks since 2009. We understand banks, we understand the risks, we understand their requirements under CPS, and I think more importantly, we warrant that our product offering will comply with open banking and indemnify if you don't. So it allows banks to move quickly.
So Grant, you mentioned that you've been working with the banks for the last 9 years. Can you give us some specifics around banks and numbers?
Yeah, look, so definitely the big four banks, so we've worked and contracted with them, so that's going through all of their due diligence and all their requirements, so we've learned a lot during that process. And in terms of numbers, as mentioned earlier, we now do that for over 400,000 customers, so you don't last this long with that many customers unless you understand banks and you get it right.
Right, so you've got a lot of experience, you've done a lot of work on this, you developed this API on your off your own back with your own team. Surely you're going to be looking to recoup costs on this, and it sounds any sort of software platform that's going to talk to the banking system sounds expensive. Can you give us a guide on costs?
Yeah, look, absolutely. So we are working in the subscription model. So we understand banks don't have lots of money, especially in this COVID-19 environment, to splash on new systems. So our model and our pricing model is quite simple. $7,500 gets you up and running, and $3,000 a month fixed fee, and that includes everything. So hosting, updates, and access to our team, should you require help from time to time.
So great. So that sounds like a very competitive cost structure for major banks and non-major banks. How can you actually afford to provide a service at that price point?
Yeah, look, I think the first point to make is our platform has already been built and been running since 2009. So this is an additional module. The structure that we have, it's one platform that can be used by multiple banks. So it's not an independently or separately housed solution. So we get to share those costs. It's one platform, one hosting solution shared across many banks. So that's how structurally we're always going to be more cost effective than, say, buying or a solution or building your own.
Right, so can you give us a ballpark of what it would actually cost to develop this standalone API if a bank said, no, we want to actually own the platform and own our own system?
Yeah, look, costs will vary depending on development teams. Look, our experience would be you're looking at least a 2 to 3 dev team, a couple of testers, so and 6 months. So you're looking at that at least 200 to 300,000, and then ensuring that it complies with all your internal standards. So it is not a cheap or quick exercise. Buying the software or licensing it, 2 costs there. There's the initial cost, and that will vary from provider to provider, but I would say in that $100,000 to $150,000 mark. But then you also need to have the internal team to maintain and manage that. It doesn't run itself. Where our model, it's a full service offering. You pay a subscription fee, we manage it all, and we look after it. So basically, you don't have to.
So from my end, from the bank's end, how many resources am I going to have to pull out of my existing IT department to make sure this is integrated and works well for us?
Yeah, look, there is no integration for the product reference data API. It is an online portal. You're granted access. You add a product and you publish it instantly. So it is as simple as it gets. There is no integration. It's online and you can get set up in under a day.
Right. So which of my employees is going to be doing the hard yakka of I guess, inputting our data? Yeah,
so this, our solution is targeted at your sales and marketing and product teams. So they will be the people creating your products, adding the unique features that you have and publishing it instantly. It is not your development team, it's not your technical team, and it's not your security team either.
Okay, so we're in July, deadline's 1st of October. I'm the CEO, CIO of a bank who's ready to press the button. What's my pathway to getting ready?
Yeah, look, it can be done quickly. We have a contract ready for a bank to review. We have our CPS due diligence pack, and we have a team ready to help answer any questions or help you with our product. For people who have joined us on the webinar today that come from a bank, what we've actually done is set you up in our sandbox and added one of your products. So you can actually test drive the product reference data API right now.
So you've actually set up the banks who are watching today in your API, ready to go with one product?
Yeah, absolutely. We wanted to demonstrate that we are live, we are ready, and that you can comply today.
So do you have banking customers using this product now?
We have several banks currently testing our product reference data API, and in the coming weeks we'll be making some very exciting announcements about new clients.
So I'm the CEO, I'm flat out, my CEO is flat out. Tell me what I need to do to get this product up and running.
Yeah, look, I think you need to grab your product and marketing team so they can start getting your products ready for the API, and in parallel to that, get your legal and risk team together, and our team will walk you through the whole process.
This is a good opportunity to bring your CTO, Peter Spedden, into the conversation.
Yeah.
So Peter's joining us from New Zealand.
Thanks, Dennis. I'm Pete Spedden, CTO of SISS. It's great to be talking to you all.
Peter, as CTO, can you talk to our other technically minded viewers exactly what the product is, how it works, and how it integrates into their system?
The product consists of 2 parts. The first part is a responsive web application that guides non-technical bank users through the entry of product data. The app itself is written in C# on ASP.NET Core 3.1 using Razor Pages. The Entity Framework manages the data access and storage. The second part of the solution is the API itself, which is hosted in Azure API Management. API Management retrieves the data for the requests via a data access layer.
Peter, I've put Grant under the spotlight and pressured him to help us understand exactly why people should be using the platform. Can you reassure us and our viewers how secure the platform is and what steps you've taken to make it so?
SISS uses standard application development frameworks which handle the majority of the security within the application, and we host our applications on Microsoft Azure to provide that security and redundancy capability. We scan all of our software and platforms using the Qualys vulnerability suite, and we use external parties to penetration test our solutions before deployment. We constantly look at evaluating the components that we use to ensure that they're up to date with the security patches that are available. And we also work closely with the legislative bodies such as the ACCC over new changes that are coming to the API specs to make sure that we develop those and produce them in a timely manner for our partners.
My understanding of the CDR is that the whole point of the consumer data right is to make life better for consumers. So how is this product reference data going to do that?
Yeah, look, this allows a consumer to compare the product they have with other products that are out there in the market. Specifically for non-major banks, this is their opportunity to showcase just how good their product is compared to those major banks. So it is both a retention strategy, keep your existing customers, and a strategy to attract new customers.
We've been working in partnership with DigiMe and SISS Data Services to create a visualisation tool to showcase what you're talking about. So I think now's a good time to actually have a look at that and take people through exactly how this data is going to be compared with a live API and being able to compare with other banks. So let's have a look at that now.
Welcome to the DigiMe Product Data Comparison Tool. This is a tool that lets you compare two bank accounts side by side. This tool is powered by SISS Data Services. SISS provide a product that lets data holders input their bank data or their product reference data to comply with the CDR requirements. Today we're going to compare two bank accounts. Let's start that process. Let's pretend I'm Hume Bank and I want to compare one of my simple savings transaction type accounts to another bank. So I select from the list of banks, I select from my list of accounts, and then the question is, who do I want to compare it to? Let's compare it to, say, Police Bank. So as you can see, I can search or I can select from the drop down. Similarly, when I click on the drop down, I get a list of all the products that are available. Please note that SISS has input a bunch of data into our tool in order for this comparison to work. This data is publicly available on the websites. This is by no means complete, but it is enough for you to get an idea of what a comparison app could look like. So we're going to compare that against the S1 Easy account. So these are two transaction savings type accounts. So what I'm now seeing is some of the product details, the name of the product, some of its base functionality, some of the fees, the constraints. That would be things like a minimum, maximum balance. Eligibility would relate to things like Australian citizenship, if they need to be an employee, if they have to live within a certain postcode. For instance, many community-owned banks do have eligibility criteria, so they are quite important. And the deposit rates in the case of term deposits and loans, those interest rates are very important. But for today's purpose, let's just have a quick look at the features. So this is what we're seeing and expect a lot of comparison fintechs and a lot of comparison apps to do, is to list the features and functions of bank accounts so a consumer can make an informed decision. So on the left-hand side with Hume Bank, I'm seeing that we have a digital wallet and we've got Apple Pay and Google Pay, but on the right with Police Bank, we have the extra Samsung Pay. So it's really important for banks to put their best foot forward and actually give a bit of detail when it comes to inputting their product reference data. And similarly, we can see on the right hand side with Police Bank, we have an overdraft facility. So basically, this is giving a side-by-side comparison. It's a marketing tool as well as a compliance tool. Hopefully that gives you a brief understanding of what the product reference tool is and how comparison apps in particular could be using this data. Should you have any queries on this, please don't hesitate to reach out to ID Exchange via their dev portal or alana@siss.com.au. Thank you.
1st of October 2020 is the deadline for all ADIs and Tier 2 banks to have their product data reference API ready. That's the first deadline. My understanding is that the major banks are actually going to have transactional data available, that is actual customer transaction data available in the open banking economy by that date as well. Can you enlighten us on what this means to the Tier 2 banks? Are we going to be left behind when the major banks are out there sharing transactional data?
Yeah, look, so let's bring it back down to the three simple things you need to do for open banking. You need to have your product reference data available, you need to give data to accredited data recipients, and you need to give your data back to the consumers. So banks have already shared their product data, they're about to share transactional data. So what they're actually going to have is a year head start on the non-major banks in terms of practicing and refining their skills for open banking. So to some extent, the non-majors are going to be at a disadvantage. So I think the non-majors need to start developing strategies of how do I start sharing data earlier, if they can go earlier in open banking, or what are the alternatives. And the other option that they need to have a look at, or the other strategy they need to implement, is also how they return the data back to the individuals, because that's another thing that they'll need to do to comply with open banking.
Right, so you're saying, as a tier 2 bank or ADI, we could be left behind by the major banks. Do we have a solution to that? Do you have a solution to that?
Yeah, look, so we do have a solution. So we will be releasing our open banking solution in due course. But there's other options. DigiMe, for example, is one. They have been sharing consumer data for a while. So if you do want to not miss out on that opportunity to share, you need to look at what else is out there. SISS is one option, DigiMe is another. But do not get left behind is the key message. You do need to start thinking about the strategy and acting now.
So the main thing is, as a tier 2 bank, in my understanding, with all these deadlines coming up, is I don't want to be left behind. I don't want the major banks getting a run on me. Do you have a solution to that?
Look, we do. So we have our product reference data API, can be deployed in days. And yes, if you do want to share your consumer data as a data holder, we do have a solution that you can implement on the same model.
So what you've talked about, what we touched on, is transactional data actually going out now. People's banking data, their credit card data, being available to the wider data sharing economy to use. So what DigiMe does is actually bring that data into the DigiMe platform. Importantly, DigiMe not only accepts banking data through APIs, it's also a platform that accepts all personally identifiable information from consumers. So they can bring in their social media data, they can bring in their Fitbit data, wearables data, their health data, insurance data. Any form of data that's being built through the API can go into DigiMe. And what's great about that for institutions is that all this data is interoperable. That means it's all readily accessible to any other institution that wants to ask permission to the consumer to look at their data. So why would they want to do that? And this is where we get into the value exchange between of the services that you're offering with the API data out there in transactional data and what DigiMe can bring to the economy. So what it means is that as a financial institution, say particularly a tier 2, you will finally have access to a customer's broader range of data. Now what that means is you can ask the customer with their permission to analyse that. That doesn't mean you take all their data and stick it on your servers and look at it. It just means you ask the customer if you are able to analyse their data to see if you can create a better product or service based on their personal preferences. Now it's up to you as an institution to make that a compelling offer. What are you doing for the consumer in exchange to look at their data to make their life better? Now this works on a number of levels for institutions. It means that for the first time you can actually have a real one-to-one relationship with your customers. Until now, you've been able to have the data that you have with them, whether it's through your app or your online banking, for instance. Yes, you have the customer's banking data and you have identifiable information from them, and that's one relationship you have with them, and that's great, and you can offer services based on that. But imagine what services you could offer if you had access to their other data. Now, you might think about that and go, well, that sounds like a minefield, having access to everyone's. But we don't want to have Facebook data on our services of customers. That's not actually how DigiMe works. DigiMe is a platform that works with your platforms, your existing APIs. It allows you consented access to the customer's data. But the fact is that data never leaves the customer's device. And on that device, that data is protected with military-grade security, twice between where the customer stores their data and on their device and through DigiMe. DigiMe never sees, touches or holds that data. So all the bank or the institution has to do is analyse this data and provide a better service for customers. So we call that a decentralised platform.
Look, I agree with you, Dennis. I think one of the issues or the limitations we saw with the current data sharing model was, what we call the B2B model, is it's for a particular use for a limited set of data. There is an enormous amount of opportunity for an expanded data set, but what we found is no customer wants one organisation to have everything about them. They don't want their bank or their accounting software or their platform to know all about their data. So the reason why we saw an opportunity with DigiMe is, how could we solve that? Well, the answer is data has to be in the hands of the individual. When you have that scope of data, that breadth of data, all of a sudden you can ask a lot more questions and get a lot more answers. And I think that's the true benefit of DigiMe. And it's in that decentralised model, so it addresses the risk of having too much data in one place. And the security issue is addressed, as you mentioned. You have multiple levels of encryption, so that gives customers security. But most importantly, it's their own data. They are completely in control. So yeah, to summarise, I do believe DigiMe has a model that solves the problem of how do I unlock all that data. I don't want an institution to have it. I want to be in control. And for developers, you don't want to build to every API that's out there. You can go straight to DigiMe, query the data in a safe and secure way and get the answer that you want.
So one of the things about the DigiMe platform, and data in particular, is that there's so much data out there. It's important to actually get the right data. There's no point in having teraflops of data and not being able to use it. So one of the things that DigiMe does is actually enable the bank and the customer to have an up-to-date set of data which is accurate, it's secure, and it's consented. I'm sure if a bank, an institution went through their database, they'd probably find that a lot of the data is incomplete and quite unusable actually. We've seen examples where emails and letters are being sent to people who are no longer at addresses or what have you, and the situation's changed. And the opportunity with a digital sharing platform, a private sharing platform, is that banks have access to much more contemporary and accurate data. So what that brings me back to, right to the start of our presentation today, is the value exchange for customers. The CDR is all about customers. You've built an API which is the first step for financial institutions, ADIs, Tier 2 banks, to actually get in the open banking economy. As ID Exchange and DigiMe, we're very excited to partner with you in helping bring that to market. And what I would suggest to our viewers today is that the value exchange to customers is not too early to start thinking about that either. This is the first step. We know we're going to a consent-based economy. The data is going to be available. Now's the time to start thinking, how are you going to make your data available to customers in a high-value proposition for them to share their data back with you, to make your business better, to retain customers, to attract new ones, and to improve your services for them. And like the API you've developed, the DigiMe platform actually allows institutions to comply. One of the main things that financial institutions have to do is make customers' data readily accessible. And DigiMe provides a platform, as you can see, that brings the data into the system and actually creates it in a very visual, palatable and usable way. It makes it useful to the customer. It's good value to have for them to have their data on their phone that they can share with other institutions. We have heard of some institutions looking to comply by offering customers an Excel spreadsheet of their data, which is completely useless.
Oh no, look, I agree with you, Dennis. One of the obligations for banks is to give data back to the consumer. I hope banks don't give the data back in an Excel spreadsheet. For me, that's a backward step. We've just built all this infrastructure. I think data should be held in vehicles such as DigiMe because that's how you extract the value and that's how consumers want their data. So let's hope the end result is consumers get access to their data and the data goes into DigiMe and they can extract the value that they need.
Yeah, so for institutions who have their own data set in isolation, how useful is that to them when there are other data sets out there that can now be available to them that are proven to be accurate and relevant to their customers?
Yeah, look, Dennis, I think we'd look back at the hackathon that DigiMe hosted about a year ago, I think it was, where we had several data sets available to them, and we had some great, amazing developers, I think it was at UTS. Given the opportunity or the availability of all those data sets, no developer chose a single data set. They actually combined all of those data sets to create some really amazing apps. I think there was an app relating to shopping, and there was even an app related to healthcare, but it required multiple data sets. So a singular data set, there's not much value. When combined, a lot of value.
Yeah, my favourite app developed that weekend was around cancer treatment for regional customers, where it not only used their health data and their wearable data, it could use item number data from Medicare, it could use geolocation data for calculating travel to and from treatment centres.
It was calculating the Uber fares.
The Uber fares, social data, so Facebook support groups, etc. So we're able to combine all those data sources to create a value, and not least of which was financial data, which enabled the customer to understand what their treatment costs were going to be, how much money they had in the bank, and if they needed any bridging finance or ways that banks could actually help this customer in need get through their treatment. So that's kind of value proposition, or value exchange we're talking about that you can do with multiple data sets. So thank you to everyone for joining us in today's webinar. I hope it's been informative and, dare I say, exciting to see what the opportunities are in open banking, particularly getting started with the product reference data API. Grant, thanks for joining us and being part of the team for so many years.
Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure. And if you want to get in touch with us, contact Grant directly at SISS Data Services or Joanne Cooper at ID Exchange. You'll see the details below. And very much thanks to our major sponsor, DXC Technology. We're very happy to be teaming up with DXC in this exciting space. So thank you for joining us, and we're looking forward to seeing you at our next OpenX webinar.